Fussville, an introduction. The time is the 1840s, and brave immigrants, brave Germans, are leaving a place of political unrest and economic hardship to start over, start a new life in a new country. Among them, wealthy and much respected resident of Niederdries Johann Fuss, his wife Anna Maria, and their 11 children aged 13 to 32. Beginning with a nucleus of about 30 families, mostly German, but not all, a wilderness is being tamed. Ground is being broken for planting and farms established near or around a dirt road called Fond du Lac Road. A community is taking shape called Fussville. By the 1870s, Fussville is thriving with its own post office, blacksmith shop, stagecoach inn and hotel, brewery and saloons galore. It is a traveler's oasis serving those making their way from Milwaukee to the Fox River Valley and has a population of 382. Johann Fuss's son Joseph is a successful businessman and operates a brewery, lumber yard, and the Fuss Hotel. It's said that lumber from his lumber yard helps to build the community-centered St. Anthony the Hermit Catholic Church. Welcome to Fussville. Our walk today begins on the east side of what would have been Highway 41, near the Milwaukee County-Waukesha County border. Back in the mid-1800s, the Fuss Hotel was the first stagecoach inn encountered by Milwaukee travelers making their way north. It was said that famous Milwaukee land speculator Solomon Juneau and his wife Josette once spent the night in the hotel as they traveled north to Theresa. By the 1930s, businessman Joseph Fuss's grandson Henry Tennyson, his wife Helen Olive Wright Tennyson, and their children farm the land and make the hotel their home. As we walk up the drive, Henry welcomes us and gives us a tour of his home. Then he escorts us outside, down a path, to the spring house. He slides the door open to reveal a sunlit room. To the right, flagstone steps take us down to an underground tunnel about 40 feet long. Its consistently cool 50-degree temperature made it the perfect place for storing kegs of beer in the hotel's heyday, and now serves as storage room for farm produce. Cool, refreshing water gurgles up from 2 artesian springs, a main ingredient in Joseph Fuss's brewery back in the day, and now a hand pump brings the pure, sparkling water to the surface, where city folk buy it for 5 cents a gallon. As we leave the spring house, we see the beautiful colors of the Tennyson's gladiolas. Henry tells us the blooms are at their peak. Many will be cut and taken by the wagonful to be shared with parishioners and friends of St. Anthony the Hermit Catholic Church down the road. During the early to mid-20th century, Fussville is a patchwork of farms and fields. The Tim Farm was on Highway 41, owned by Louis and Anna Zastro Tim. Farther down the highway was the Vogl Farm, and the Wick Farm, operated by Leander and Gertrude Schwister Wick. Down Highway W, also known as Good Hope Road, was the Birkwald Farm and the Fred Wick Farm, owned by Fred P. and Anna Schmitz Wick. Off of the highway, on Kloss Road, was the Kloss Farm, owned by Roman F. and Marcella Brahm Kloss. On Lily Road was the Brahm Farm, and on Mill Road was the Schmitz Farm, to name only a few of the farms of the area. And what bound all these Fussville farms together? It was family. Children born to farm families were not only gifts from God, but laborers in the home and field. Fussville farm families were often large, and as those children grew up, they intermarried with other large Fussville families, making Fussville one large, interrelated family. As we walk along the highway, we come to the busy four corners of Fussville. Of the 4 iconic taverns in the community, Schmitz's is our first stop. In 1897, Adolf Schneider buys land on the corner and opens a saloon. It's said that the Fussville post office is located here, and Adolf one of its first postmasters. In the 1910s, relative Matthias Schmitz takes over and renames the property Schmitz Tavern and Dance Hall. Although the post office has been relocated to Menominee Falls, the corner continues to be busy with activity. St. Anthony Catholic Church holds card parties and their annual Kermis dance here. Young people of the parish put on plays, as do the Fussville Busy Beaver 4-H Club. And in 1933, 3,000 farmers gathered to decide about a milk strike. Matthias actively promotes basketball, wrestling, and roller skating, and in 1937 is president and treasurer of the Fussville Baseball Club, with home games taking place on his property. About the building itself, Matthias, his wife Mary, and their only daughter Lorraine live upstairs. There's an ice cream parlor off to the side. And during the days of Prohibition, there are rumors of a still hidden in the back, liquor stored in secret places, and possible dealings with Chicago gangster Al Capone. From Schmitz's Tavern on the southwest corner of Highway 41 and Good Hope Road, we cross Good Hope and make our way to Vogel's. In the 1870s, the building was a stagecoach inn called the Fussville House, owned by George Inden and located near St. Anthony the Hermit Catholic Church. But sometime later, it was picked up off of its foundation and moved here. As we walk into the tavern, we're greeted by owners Helen and Frank J. Vogl. Helen offers us a drink and tells us stories of how her father-in-law, Frank X. Vogl, bought the business, moved his family from Milwaukee, and named the establishment Vogel's Tavern. And how when Frank X died and Frank J. took ownership in 1947, he changed the name to Vogel's Tap. She talks about the scale out front, where beet farmers would weigh their harvest before taking it to the factory in the falls, and the hand pump that would occasionally get knocked over during a Saturday night fight. We're here on a Sunday, and church is just let out at St. Anthony, where Helen and Frank and their daughter Barbara are members. Some parishioners walk in and stay for what they call a benediction. Children are welcome at Vogel's too, and while parents talk with Frank about this and that, Helen hands out orange soda, balloons, and maybe something from the candy counter. Leaving Vogel's on the northwest corner of Highway 41 in Good Hope, we continue north along Highway 41. As we walk, we pass by John and Anna Umhaver's house, on our way to our next stop, the White Chip Tavern. As we enter, we see two elderly gents in the corner who invite us to sit for a spell as they tell us stories about the founding of the tavern. They recall how John Otzelberger immigrated to the area with his parents in 1855, and how his younger son Aloysius, later to be known as Chief, would grow up to become a farmer on Good Hope Road and open the tavern in 1926. The men recall Chief's son Bob, who attended St. Anthony Parish School for a time, and how he and his brothers would tend bar when the grown-ups needed to step away for a while. And they recall the tavern itself. The heyday of the business was the 1920s, when the White Chip survived Prohibition with moonshine, near beer, and slot machines in a back room. They smile when they recall the raid one day by federal agents, and laugh, knowing they never did find that bootleg whiskey stored at John and Anna Umhaver's house next door. Chief would open other taverns in Menominee Falls, and the White Chip would be opened again by Fats McLaughlin and later Bubby Bentz. The year is 1947. Crossing Highway 41 and now heading back south along the highway, our next stop is St. Anthony the Hermit Parish School. It's been in existence since its founding by the School Sisters of Notre Dame in 1855. This particular building may have been constructed around 1867 and is a combination of school and convent. School was an exception rather than the rule for many Fussville children, made available only after farm chores were done and the harvest was in the barn. A typical school year was roughly 5 months long, and given such an abbreviated term, is it any wonder that it took roughly 60 years for the first St. Anthony graduating class in 1921. Other religious orders besides the Notre Dames led their young charges through academic and religious studies. For many years, both German and English were taught. German from the old country in the morning, and English in the afternoon. And woe to the student who dared to speak the wrong language in the appointed hour. Many remember their education at St. Anthony. They recall Father J.P. Bullenbeck, who was the pastor at the time. They recall the water pump out front, with one drinking cup shared by all, and with no indoor plumbing, boys and girls outhouses down the hill. They also recall their educator sisters. In particular, they recall Sister Probeta Ziegler, school sister of St. Francis. A stern disciplinarian, the Archbishop of Milwaukee sent many of the diocese's more challenging students to St. Anthony and Sister Probeta. As we continue to move along Highway 41, time is also moving along. When Father Bullenbeck becomes seriously ill in 1949, it's Father Joseph P. Reichling who will take his place and pastor the good people of St. Anthony until his retirement in 1981. We meet Father Reichling and his dog Mitzi as we make our way up the hill toward the church. Although his schedule is busy, he takes time to tour us around the parish grounds. He tells us a bit about himself and his background, how he was an army chaplain in World War II and then went from Racine to St. Mary and Menominee Falls before arriving at St. Anthony the Hermit. He talks about the many changes and improvements that have been made to the infrastructure of the parish over the years, how the church was gutted, the old wooden flooring replaced with tile, and installation of indoor plumbing. He talks about the intentional burning of the old parish school and convent, making way for the new convent built for the school sisters of St. Francis. He talks about the demolition of the old rectory once standing directly to the south of the church and the construction of the new rectory overlooking North Hills Country Club. And he talks about the school, how during the baby boom era, enrollment grew rapidly from 250 to over 500 students. He talks about the new St. Anthony Parish School dedicated in 1953 and the 9-room addition added in 1958. As we leave St. Anthony the Hermit Catholic Church and continue south along the highway, our next stop is North Hills Country Club. Once the farm of Fussville founder Johann Fuss, and later the property of his grandson Carole, the rolling green fields and meandering Menominee River catch the eye of an enterprising group of businessmen who will purchase the property from Carole for $30,000 and lease the Fuss farmhouse, barn, and outbuildings. Golf was a rapidly growing sport in 1920s Milwaukee, and it wasn't long before membership to the private club exceeded expectations. Construction on the new clubhouse began in April of 1930, and on July 13th of that year, newspapers were excited to announce the club's opening. And it was then that the community of Fussville and North Hills Country Club became intertwined. Some residents would become members. Father Reichling was only one of several pastors to take out clerical memberships. Charles Shiley would move his family from Illinois to settle in Fussville and become the club's superintendent. He and his wife Mary would send their boys to St. Anthony the Hermit Parish School next door. Joe Burkwald would work part-time as a club pro and lease 10 acres of Burkwald farmland to open a driving range down Good Hope, complementing the needs of the club. Fussville housewives would work in the kitchen and as waitresses, and many a young Fussville boy would later remember lugging heavy members' clubs, working as a caddy. Continuing along the highway, we are once again approaching the four corners of Fussville at the intersection of Appleton Avenue and Good Hope Road. We say hi to Torn's grocery store and meat market owner Wally Torn as we make our way to Guenther's Tavern on the northeast corner of the intersection. As we enter the tavern, we spy Adam tending bar. It's a quiet afternoon, and to the hum of a fan, Adam talks with us and reminisces about the past. He recalls being the last surviving blacksmith in Fussville, perhaps taking over for Anton Lotz. He remembers the Fussville residents buzzing that he was putting the cage before the canary when he completed work on his home next door before courting the beautiful Teresa Otzelberger. Teresa was daughter of John and sister to Alois Chief Otzelberger, who we've met before. Adam remembers his marriage to Teresa at St. Anthony Catholic Church in 1908 and the Fussville community coming out to celebrate at their reception. Then in 1929, perhaps seeing the handwriting on the wall, Adam decided to transform his blacksmith business into a tavern, garage, and gas station. He would run the operation until his passing in 1950, and it was sometime later that his son-in-laws Larry Schuster and Henry Marek became partners and changed the tavern's name to Marek & Schuster's, with Henry running the tavern and Larry operating the garage. Time continues to speed along, and our journey through Fussville is nearing its end. We began this leisurely stroll in the 1930s. It's now the 1950s, actually 1958, when the village of Menominee Falls annexes the town of Menominee, including Fussville. Farmland is being sold to developers at prices too good to pass up, and in the late 1960s, Menominee Falls is being heralded as one of the fastest-growing villages in the state. One of the few remaining remnants of the village's rural roots were the truck gardens and farm stands that dotted the village's southern section. At the Umhafers' house, John Umhafer had a large garden and sold tomatoes along Appleton Avenue with the help of 2 sawhorses and a couple of planks. The Roffers had their 10-acre truck garden and orchard near the Appleton Avenue Good Hope Road intersection. There, little Judy Roffers, age 8, learned how to make change and tend the family's farm stand, while Mother Catherine worked in the field and Father Roy sold produce out of the back of his vehicle before his shift at A.O. Smith. Rose Thine tended her 4-acre garden off of Kloss Road, and with the help of her children and nephew Larry Kloss, made a living selling fruits and vegetables after the death of her husband in 1966. The garden produced everything imaginable, from berries to flowers, beans to pumpkins, and so much more. Sales were made to regular customers door to door and delivered to stores like the Fruit Ranch, Drager's IGA, St. Emilian's Orphanage, and the School Sisters of St. Francis Convent on Layton Avenue. The last farm stand in Fussville was run by Danny Gruber and his wife Patty on the site where Math Schmitz Tavern and Dance Hall once stood. Danny is Math's grandson, and from 1990 until its closing in 2017, regular customers eagerly awaited the stand's opening at the end of the summer, and still lament its closing, missing the fresh garden produce and smiles and conversation with Danny and Patty. Throughout its history, the story of Fussville has intertwined with the development of Appleton Avenue. Before the European immigrants arrived, Appleton Avenue had no name and was little more than a footpath through the wilderness, linking the Menominee and Chippewa to villages south toward the lake and north toward the Fox River Valley. Then it became a dirt road called Fond du Lac Road, linking white settlers like Johann Fuss and his sons to supplies and trade south toward Milwaukee and north toward the growing village of Menominee Falls and beyond. In 1922, it was paved and became Highway 15, then the longest stretch of concrete in Wisconsin. And later it would be given new names like Highway 41, Highway 175, and Appleton Avenue. And as the highway grew and changed, the businesses and residences of Fussville, built right along the highway's edges, remained the same, until the late 1960s and everything changed. It was then that the Department of Transportation, in conjunction with local officials, spent months of deliberation deciding on a new design for the highway for the purpose of safety, traffic needs, and maintenance. The new Highway 175 would be 4 lanes rather than 2, with a 30-foot median in between. It would veer slightly west of its original footprint, perhaps in an effort to preserve the historic North Hills Country Club and St. Anthony the Hermit Parish. But in all, 150 other property owners would be affected. Some would lose a corner or an edge of their land, while others, including the iconic White Chip Tavern, Vogel's Tap, Mark and Schuster's, and Gressbach's Beer Depot and Barbershop, well, they would lose everything. By spring of 1971, the home and business owners affected were told to vacate the premises. Vogl family members remember that Fussville became a ghost town. And then the machinery came in. A student of St. Anthony Parish School remembered, "My classmates and I just thought it was cool, watching from the windows of St. Anthony while the earth movers made Appleton Avenue what it is today. We had no clue that they would be wiping Fussville off the map." Fussville gone? Well, check an atlas in Wisconsin. You might find Fussville. Or explore the area between Good Hope and Appleton Avenue. You might find a reminder. But more importantly, Fussville is kept alive by past residents, their grandchildren, and others who have heard its stories. Now others, just like you. Thank you for remembering Fussville.